Hello, and welcome to today's webinar, Enterprise Mixed Reality, Take 3D Content Creation into Your Own Hands. My name is Emily, and I am Head of Content at Brain Exchange, your host this afternoon. Thank you for joining. While we wait for more people to join and settle in, here are a few housekeeping items. This webinar is being recorded and will be available to watch on demand shortly following today's talk. All participants will receive an email when the playback is ready. There will be time for Q&A at the end of the webinar. Please submit your questions in the Q&A area at the right side of your screen at any point during the presentation. There will also be a few interactive moments. In a minute, you will hear from 3 XR leaders on the importance of bringing 3D content creation capabilities into your organization today, and a powerful new partnership announced just yesterday, in fact, that aims to simplify XR adoption in enterprise. And with that, I'll hand it over to Doug Stephen from TeamworkAR to kick off the webinar.
Thank you, Emily, and welcome everybody. We've got a really exciting show today. The agenda is we're going to have Eric from ABI Research talk about mixed reality content creation and why it really matters to organizations like yourselves. Then all 3 of us are going to be looking at transforming the creation process to mixed reality and really showing how you can achieve time to value. At the end of those 3 sections, we've got some fantastic demos that are going to show some use cases around the creation of XR. So we really hope you stick around for that. But before we do anything else, I think what we want to have is a poll before I introduce the illustrious panelists. So hopefully by now, people can see the poll and start answering it. It really is what we're looking to find out is what are the biggest issues holding your company back from scaling mixed reality? We're starting to see a lot of it is being on the content design and expertise to be able to do it. It is with the tightening of the market, some of the key skills that are required. You're absolutely right that does slow down development, especially finding them. And it's really interesting because we're going to be talking a lot about that in our presentation later on. Time to value, that's something that's dear to our hearts. I mean, there are things that we believe are going to be really, really important to be able to get that. And then, of course, user adoption. We all know what it's like the first time you put on an Oculus Quest. You have to get orientated, and it's everybody thinks it's dead simple. It takes a little bit of time, but once you get used to it, you'll love it. So Emily, is the poll going to be closed shortly so I can continue?
We'll leave it up just in case anyone wants to respond during the webinar.
Sounds good. So I'm now going to introduce our panelists. My name is Doug Stephen. I'm President of Enterprise Learning at CGS, as well as President of TeamworkAR, which is, we'll talk a little more about it, which is a software platform designed to really work with all forms of mixed reality. We have the pleasure of working with scores of Fortune 500 companies and really have gleaned some information about, what are they looking to find out. Now, I'll go over that a little bit later. As well with me is Kevin Jordan, the Alliance Director of Matterport. Most people know Matterport is the standard for 3D space capture, and it really allows you to transform real-life spaces into digital twin models. And last but not least, is Eric Abbruzzese. He's with ABI Research, which is a global technology intelligence firm that provides strategic guidance to technology leaders around the world. So a little bit, we'll hand this over to Eric, and he's going to talk about mixed content reality and why it matters. Eric, off to you.
Excellent. Thank you very much, Doug, and thanks everybody for joining today. So I thought it'd be good to start at the top. Maybe some of this is obvious and some of it isn't, but it's important to keep in mind what's going on and what's driving some of these trends we're going to talk about here today. We still can't avoid COVID-19, both in terms of danger of exposure and sickness, but also in terms of the ongoing impact it's had on enterprises. We still see most companies that went to remote work maintaining all or some at minimum of that remote work. So keeping those workers digitally connected is crucial, and the number of necessary connection points is pretty significant. And so that's a challenge to keep in mind. Somewhat relatedly is digitization. That's been happening across enterprises, especially in industrial areas where high complexity really starts to drive both value but also potential obstacles. So keeping things connected within the system as well, and the users within that system connected is incredibly important. Horizontal trends in the market. So augmented and virtual reality both are really expanding out of single use case, single user type experiences to multi-use case, multi-user. And that has content demands. It also has platform demands that tie into that digitization side. But very rarely do you see a company say, we just want one user and doing one thing in augmented or virtual reality. They really want the platform to be there when they need it. And that means it spans across their use cases and their needs. And it's important to mention consumer AR, even though we'll be speaking of enterprise and time to value for companies. There's an influx coming of devices that may be targeted towards the consumer market. But when we're speaking of mixed reality and virtual reality content, those devices are ubiquitous in both sides. So when we see low cost devices that maybe are targeted as a consumer device, enterprises are all about that. Low cost, easy to use, that's a win-win for enterprises too. So as we see more devices come from that quote unquote consumer side, that has a pretty significant impact on the enterprise and what's available to companies who may want it. So at ABI Research, obviously we're a market research firm. Data is at the core of what we do. And so I'm presenting here some of the mixed reality vertical tracking that we do. And obviously it's pretty significant in terms of the number of verticals. I'll highlight healthcare, manufacturing, logistics, energy and utilities as some really great drivers of augmented reality on the enterprise. AEC and real estate's an up and comer as well. We're seeing some really significant traction there. The high complexity verticals are really the ones that adopted AR and VR first. They had the most need for connected workers, a connected workforce, and interactive content, and they saw the most value from that. And so they were first to adopt in areas like manufacturing and logistics, and they continue to be high adoption rate areas. No matter the vertical, efficiency is the name of the game for all of them, both at the user level and the company level. And as I mentioned earlier, the horizontal approach to the market is helpful and it's becoming increasingly common, but it does have challenges as well. So when you look from a vertical standpoint, you need to keep in mind systems integration, enterprise level systems integration, tying into IoT, PLM, CRM, anything that's existing that would have valuable data for a mixed reality platform. Being able to pull that in is very valuable. The complexity of the environment where people are using these devices is also important from a content capture standpoint, but also from a usage standpoint. Being able to keep users safe and efficient is very important. Horizontally, more broad looking is some of that user adoption, making sure you can prove value to the user, which thankfully is quite easy with mixed reality. You just have to really get it in front of them first. And getting access to that content is also very important and valuable, making sure the content's delivered to the right user at the right time. So when you're approaching the market, you really have to keep in mind that usage environment, because that can dictate what's needed from the content standpoint and hardware standpoint. Speaking of content, who's going to create it? It could be in-house, it could be through partnerships. There's different devices and capture types, which we'll talk about here today. You have to answer the question, who's creating it, and what's the process like to get that into your ecosystem. And what's already available is another important one. By being able to efficiently use resources if you have existing 3D content. If you don't, what do you use? Answering those questions is very valuable. And speaking of value, the conversation around augmented or virtual reality time to value looks similar to other new technologies with a few caveats. So there's the solution cost of the augmented reality side, you have hardware, software services that may or may not be part of an existing ecosystem. Development of content, like I mentioned, sometimes consulting to get that content optimized for your services and for your users, time to integration and getting users on board. Those are either direct or indirect costs, time or money, that need to be considered. Some of the really universal ones like taxes and currency, cost of capital, those are all applicable to augmented reality as well. Life of assets is too, and maybe something that's forgotten about a little bit. How long are these devices going to be used? How long is this content usable for? How quickly do you churn through, let's say, a factory floor layout and you have to update? That's a very important consideration. And that leads all to return on investment, which I think a lot of these are well known, but reduction in downtime and travel costs are very straightforward. Efficiency increases for workers, safety increases for workers, satisfaction of work for those workers. They're more engaged with their workflow through augmented and mixed reality. And that's all directly attributable to return on investment. And I like the travel cost as a great easy ROI example. If you have, let's say, an international expert travel once, if you can eliminate that travel, it, even with a high cost device, will pay for itself. A mixed reality headset minus the travel cost, you're probably breaking even with one use. And that's one user, one use, obviously at scale that continues to prove. And so to look at a use case, really, what does mixed reality content look like, and how is it used, and what is the end value from the user standpoint? Humans are visual learners, and I think that's a really critical point here. Even with traditional, let's say, video content for training, which is a visual medium, it's not interactive. It's two-dimensional. It's a passive experience. Active interaction in 3D and at proper scale is a best case scenario for content retention and recall, which obviously is a boon for training. Mixed reality is unique because, as I mentioned, it boosts satisfaction. There's plenty of surveys out there of users where they're happier in mixed reality for training than another paradigm. The knowledge capture potential of mixed reality lessens the impact from retiring workforce, which is another key trend, watching, especially in those high complexity markets I mentioned earlier. If you can capture in real time the expertise of a worker and have that automatically logged and ready to go for another user, an infinite number of users potentially, there's obviously significant value there. And there's some really unique user level data types that haven't necessarily been available before. Tracking spatially where the users are, heat maps, what are they looking at, what are they interacting with, how long are they interacting with an object or a work element of the workflow, and how successful they are. If you're using step-by-step instruction, where are the barriers to success? That can all be logged and reported in a really convenient way. And you look at some of the I guess the KPIs that you see just with training. This is a collection of sources, through case studies, like a meta-analysis, 90% or more on average error reduction. That's gigantic. I mean, first time fix rate is improved. Scrap rates are reduced with error reduction at that level. 80% retention of content after 30 days versus 20 or 30% with video or with reading. And 20% of all AR usage, and this is an ABI statistic, 20% of all usage in manufacturing is for training, which we're seeing, and that can grow. There's obviously overlap with other use cases like remote assistance and things like that, but training is a really key use case in those high value markets, and we've seen that bear out in the data. So I hope that's a good introduction. I will hand it back to Doug for some more real world examples.
So Eric, thank you. And what hits me is, the time, the value, and the fact that people are visual learners, and the key that things do, the whole sophistication is important. So really great stuff. A little bit about, we have a partnership with Matterport. Our company is TeamworkAR, and a little bit about the platform. We're a software-based platform. We do mixed reality, whether it's AR, VR, or mixed reality. We work on Android, iOS. We work on Windows-based, browser-based. Work with both, Oculus Quest, HoloLens. And we really pride ourselves on the collaboration. We're going to be showing you some examples where we're using VR, and we got group VR with a number of people. And just giving an example, we just are running a program with the American Red Cross where we've been training thousands of phlebotomists in their metaverse to be able to perform whole blood collection. Where we are a little bit different than a lot of companies, we are an enterprise training company, so we are seeing the best of the best out there. We learn from them and we incorporate it into our platform. And then what we're seeing is really how can you deliver content to the right person when they need it, and that's using object recognition and capture, and then you have to have the capability to do rapid authoring, because we all know things change really, really quickly, and that's what our platform does. So literally, if we take a look at, we are an enterprise training company. We focus a lot on self-service. We want to make it easier to use. And that the whole idea is we tend to be software because we know that the hardware is changing daily. And where we play is primarily in field services as well as in the enterprise training space. And we're seeing rapid growth in all of those areas. So what I'd like to do is turn it over to Kevin. Kevin, it's up to you.
Excellent. Thanks, Doug. All right. Excellent. Such great content. Doug, I think the rise in need for enterprise training and development is being driven by several factors in the enterprise that's forcing businesses to create change. I think Matterport plays a fundamental role in the creation of digital twins and 3D data. This can certainly be the foundation for facing some of those factors. And how we make it available to the masses quickly and cost effectively is what truly makes the technology and our services that we provide the fastest way to digitize the built world. So scaling digital twins requires key enablers like data management for one, or empowering our we're going to go through a few different models and use cases. But first, I think it would be good to orient ourselves a little bit around the Matterport technology. Oh, excuse me. Did I go next slide? Yes. Great. Excellent. Sorry. So Matterport's been digitizing the built world and turning buildings into digital information and deep spatial data for the last 11 years. Matterport gives the ability at a global scale for organizations to turn and provide access to buildings remotely and efficiently. Let me go ahead and, all right, Emily, if you don't mind teeing up the video, that'd be great.
Meet Matterport, the market-leading 3D platform that lets anyone turn a physical space into an immersive digital twin. Homes, offices, factories, shops, museums, schools, you name it. Scans are captured from any compatible camera, including the phone in your pocket. This recent innovation is only possible because of Matterport's huge data library. And behind it all is Cortex, our powerful AI and deep learning neural network that automatically stitches together images to construct dimensionally accurate 3D models. Once a digital twin is created, it can be customized with matter tags, labels, and guided tours, and easily shared with anyone on any device. They can virtually view, collaborate, and engage with 3D spaces. Thousands of companies in over 150 countries use Matterport and have realized unparalleled value. Millions of spaces of every kind have been captured, comprising billions of square feet and 3D data points, resulting in the largest spatial data library in the world. And it gets bigger every day, allowing customers across the property lifecycle to unlock unprecedented spatial data insights and analytics. Matterport has been digitizing the built world for a decade. Now, we're massively scaling towards achieving our mission of making every building and every space more valuable and accessible.
Great. Beautifully done. Thank you. I think that's a great example of how Matterport delivers value across the property lifecycle and how digital twins can be leveraged to design, promote, operate, and ensure and repair Matterport makes it extremely easy to capture spaces efficiently through several supported hardware devices, including our own Pro 2 camera. And as indicated in the video, now iOS and Android supported devices, but also our capture services, which is a turnkey white glove service we offer. If you could just orient yourself to the middle of the page here. Then Matterport's Cortex AI, which is a deep learning neural network. It's training over 11 years of 3D spatial data, creates the 3D digital twin. It's then hosted in the data platform, also in the middle of the page here. And through the platform itself, Matterport is allowing and leveraging SDK and APIs for our customers and our partners to unlock value through deep spatial indexing, creating virtual experiences, leveraging strategic integrations, and turning and allowing Matterport to become a part of their existing workflows, platforms, and solutions, allowing them to make better decisions with analytics. Additionally, customers can also automate CAD or BIM files as well. So let's cover a few of the use cases in manufacturing, and we're going to wrap with Doug rounding out with a few demonstrations of what the combined power of Matterport and TeamworkAR looks like. So we've highlighted three main use cases in industrial manufacturing where Matterport drives value. I think the gains in productivity and cost savings on documentation and reducing time and travel, as Eric indicated in his talk earlier, it's hundreds of hours of labor. When we think about the impact design and project management has on architects, engineers, and interior designers, Matterport plays an important role in collaboration throughout the design process. Crowd favorite, virtual employee training is pivotal and certainly truly important. Think about the use of Matter tags as a visualization and end tool for uploading documentation or content, embedding integrated into a learning management software. A good example of this is the way KLM Airlines uses Matterport to train their aircraft cleaning crew. They saw a 30% reduction in errors on the first cleaning for those employees that went through a Matterport-powered virtual reality training. Lastly, the way plant managers and operators can manage their spaces remotely 24/7, take measurements and prepare for installations and manage their inventory. With the use of Matter tags and notes, they can quickly assign tasks, provide real-time updates. And I think lastly, which is a good segue to our demo models, is the image on the left-hand side. We've overlaid what is an extended reality and IoT use case, illustrating the art of the possible. That's bringing in some of the IoT sensor data, airflow, and temperature gauges to kind of highlight. That's with use of our SDK and APIs. So, Doug, I think it's probably a good time we can pull up your models and we can show the true power of the combined solutions.
Sure, but before we do, it's why we're seeing the enterprise adopted for training is like what Eric says. Everybody's a visual learner, and we're seeing the sophistication of equipment that's coming, trying to make it easier for people to use and the productivity to increase. At the same time, with the tightening of the labor market, there's no more side-by-side learning, or there's very little of it. So how do you get that sort of mentoring and that sort of help when you're in a market where you just can't afford to take another subject matter expert and take them out of their day for one-on-one training? And of course, what we're hearing is, hey, we want to make it, but the time to deliver, we can't be spending 6 and 7 months when our business model changes every 6 and 7 weeks. So how can you get this type of training, digital twins, interactivities, and how can you do it quick and how can you do it cost effective? So with that, I mean, we're seeing that. So when our partnership with Matterport, we said, how is there a way to be able quickly to create scene creation? And can we add mixed reality interactions that people expect? And can we add multiple people to be working on this at the same time? And that's one of the reasons why we formed this partnership. But before we do, what I'd like to do is I'm going to load a first video. And in this case, this is using Teamwork. We actually created from the ground up this environment, fast food restaurant, where we are having people learn how to use different products of equipment. And we basically wanted to make sure that there was multiple people in there learning. And when I talk about this, it's a little bit about the scene creation itself and the physics around it. Took about 12 weeks. I'll be showing you another example with the combination of Teamwork as well and Matterport. The scene creation, the physics was created in less than a week. So let's run this first one.
So welcome to McDonald's training. Everyone, you want to follow me over here? This here is our ABS machine. This is where you make your pop. It's pretty simple. You want to point at the size you want to use, the beverage color you want, and then press enter, and we can go ahead and have our drink be poured. Z, do you want to give it a shot and get it going?
Yeah, I'll give it a shot.
Go for it.
All right, people, I'll give it a try. Look close.
There you go. Look at that. Z is natural. Thanks, everybody, for coming by. Appreciate it. And no worries.
Now, in this case, you noticed it's game-like design, so it's not photorealism. Many people like this. Many in the enterprise want actual photorealism so they can relate to it. Interestingly enough, adding multiple users into it can add incredible value because now you can have people around the world learning technology, literally in their own homes or in their satellite offices working with other people. So what I really want to do is showing you, and what's important as well, when you're looking at any of these types of platforms, what Eric was saying, reporting is just as important to make sure you have that capability. So not only do you want to track the time, you want to track the correctness as well. You want to track the time that people are working on a machine to see if maybe there's something in the design of the machine that can make it better. So a lot of these inputs can be fed back, and we happen to have it written to a learning record store with all different types of action verbs that we can do an analytics on. But now I just want to make sure, take a close look at this scene. Now we're going to show you the same scene with the same type of interactivity, but in this case, we're bringing Matterport in to work with our TeamworkAR. Eric or Kevin, anything to say before I go to the next one?
Yeah, Doug, I was just going to comment around the photorealism part. I think probably be best in the next video. But when we think about the use of this from one area of an environment, the time to create this type of content, and you compare that to bringing in photorealistic 3D digital twin, we're going from a single use case to multi-use case, and included the amount of individuals that can contribute to this. So I think it's important to highlight that outside of the creation of this, there is a broad kind of impact when you use a true 3D photorealistic digital to this custom creation.
Yeah, and then for those who are interested, this was done in Unity 3D for all of the artifacts. So let me load up one to show you with TeamworkAR and with Matterport, and I'll be able to. So this scene creation was done by a partner of Matterport's, created in 2 days. What is a little bit different, we use TeamworkAR to actually drop the interactive components into the scene creation of Matterport. So what does this do? it allows us to have full animation and interactivity coupled with reporting on the actions that are being performed.
Yeah. Hear me okay?
Yes, we can hear, sure.
No, I
So
was going to say,
you can,
dimensional accuracy as well is pretty critical in this environment as well.
absolutely. And we could also drop in this, and what we're showing you is from the viewpoint of the user. What's really interesting is once this asset is created, it can be used by putting on a set of Oculus Quests to be able to get 3D experience. And later we're going to show you how you can have this same environment can be reused for multi-users around the world. So in here we can drop step-by-step instructions into the environment. Now we start adding true animations on how the equipment would work. So it's dropping the cup, loading the ice, and adding. And what's really interesting, all of these actions are being tracked. So what we've seen here, just to give you a sense, and we're going to have some handouts that are going to talk about relative time to development using, from the ground up proprietary. But just to give you, an example of this overall time, it took to be able to create this, and there was a number of machines that were used here. It took using the proprietary, building it from scratch, took about 720 hours. Versus 184 hours using both Teamwork and Matterport. So if you're looking at, time to get to work, you're looking at under 4 weeks, versus 15 weeks. So it's quite substantial. Kevin, is there anything you want to add to that?
Yeah. Thanks, Doug. I think it's also important to point out this digital twin is, while this is this environment in which you're training individuals, to think about the scenario, different use cases that can be leveraged when we look outside of this space. For example, the way you've placed tags visually down the line where the line cooks might be, and now we're training different individuals and different skill sets. So I think it's just another example of the increased value of a 3D, real life asset in this type of environment.
What's pretty interesting, and this is really not the trick, but if you're looking at an assembly line, or you're looking at a full service or quick service restaurant, you might only be using interactivity around 10. The items that you need to learn on are only 10% of the whole environment. But people want to see the whole environment. They want to feel like they're in the whole environment. So the key is, if you have to do it from scratch, the time to make it like the whole environment is taking up a lot of time when it can be spent on really right learning physics to make sure people understand what they're trying to do. Eric, is there anything you want to add? Because I know you're really important on the visual learner.
Yeah, I think I'll call back to a point you guys both made in the accuracy of this content and this data. If something is off, if there's a step out of place, or if there's a button panel located elsewhere, those are all elements that start to slow this down and start to create difficulty and difficulty in user buy-in. And obviously that has knock-on effects for some of the efficacy of the content. I talk a lot about sort of the non-visual side of this with like voice recognition as just an example. If you have voice recognition that's bad, it's worse than having no voice recognition at all. So if you have visual content that's bad or it's inaccurate, it's worse than a training manual or a video. So ensuring that accuracy is critical for making this work.
I think when they have avatars, they call it the uncanny valley, when something just doesn't quite look right, and it turns them right off. But what's one thing that we didn't mention, I think is really important, is the reusability of assets. Not all people have headsets or are going to have headsets. Maybe a few will as they get closer to the job. But why can't we create, when we create these assets, why can't it be browser-based? Why can't we make it so that it can be popped into a conference so people from around the world? So what we've done here, and just, here it is where we have it in an XR environment. We're now taking the exact same scene with the interactivity, and now we're plopping it into TeamworkAR conferencing. I want to show you an example of how that works to show you just the power of doing something, because now you're really maximizing the cost. You're extending the reach of what you're trying to teach worldwide.
Doug, before you go into that model, I think it's such a good point about a browser-based approach. You think about the logistics of shipping out, different hardware and software and the compatibility. And I think it's important to point out, our particular approach in this is being able to support different hardware and software can become very complex, which when we think of a scenario of you being in the comfort of your own home or a classroom before you show up to this environment is why Matterport's kind of approach in terms of being browser agnostic in this way becomes, I think, pretty valuable when integrated with TeamworkAR.
That's great. So guys, we're going to put ourselves on mute as we show the last part of taking this exact same asset and dropping it into the conference area, just to show you the power that can be attributed to this.
Hey guys, good afternoon. Welcome. We are on TeamworkAR web collaboration. I can see all of us here in the meeting room. It's a pleasure to meet you all again. Today we are going to go through a skills training session. I'm going to launch a Matterport demonstration here that is going to be multiplayer, and so you should all be invited to come join. I will drive the session to begin. All these steps will be recorded in our learning record store. All right, so I'm going to get started here. Okay, I can see everybody. Let me know when the scene's loaded.
Yep, it's loaded for me.
Okay, awesome. So what we were doing today is we are going through this restaurant, and we are going to move from the customer area into the kitchen. Very clean. Lots of great information. What we're going to do today is something kind of special. We're going to go over to this interactive skills station. This is programmed with all the different skill and abilities that the worker needs to have in order to work this item. So what we've done is we've loaded up a simple procedure for serving a beverage. So that's what this machine does. And I'm just going to slide up to it. And let's have a look here. So the instructions of the skill station are, and by the way, guys, when you're doing this in real life, look to the board, because that is where you're going to see the orders come in. Anyhow, what you do is you select the beverage size, then you select the flavor, and then you hit enter to submit your order. So let me go in and see if I can make that happen. So I'm going to go in here. I'm going to zoom in on the system, and I'm going to select the medium-sized beverage. So that would be 32 ounce. So when I select it, I can either tap it if I'm in virtual reality, or if I'm on the web, I just click with my mouse. The buttons will come to life. It's going to be a Coca-Cola. So we select that, and then we initiate the machine to begin. Okay, and then I hit enter, and you can see the machine working. So the pop comes down, soda comes down, ice gets poured, drink gets poured, and then you can put the cover on and move on to the next step. Okay, so would somebody like to take control and show the skill step back to us?
Yeah, I'll give it a try.
Okay, awesome.
So I click the request button.
All right. And they have given you the ability to take over the room. Great, okay. I can see you.
So these are instructions. So I select the size, then the flavor, and click enter to lock it in.
Exactly.
Okay. Is this the button here that I click?
Yeah, that's it. Go for it. Right on. That's really cool. And then another thing that's really awesome is that all of these skill steps are being tracked, and we all get an audit report, or like a scorecard on how we have done with this, and obviously be able to work on this virtually and go back and forth. All of us be able to practice what we learned. Okay, guys. So listen, I'm going to shut that down now. Thank you so much, and we'll talk with you soon.
So it's pretty neat that we created this scene for one use case. Now it's available in VR, the browser, multi-user, without doing anything. So again, this whole idea of creating things faster, cost effectively, and for multi-use. So before we go to questions, I would just want to state that there's some really great handouts that are available on, if you look in the upper right hand side, and one of the handouts basically is an infographic showing the cost of development for VR, training, and AR. So there's a comparison of doing it from scratch and using these other tools, so you can just get a sense of what it is. There's a real good self-assessment. So there's a lot of great stuff here that hopefully you'll enjoy and you'll get some knowledge from. So I think what we'd like to do right now, Kevin or Eric, unless you want to add any closing results before we get to the questions, feel free.
Yeah, I mean, I guess one last thought on my side. I'm glad we got to show what the logging looks like in that environment, and I think we all talked about the importance of that and being able to use and reuse that for future training usage. It's also important to note that there's variability and there's flexibility in how that data is presented. So we saw a log that's really great for an office worker pouring through success rate or failure rate or time to success. With the right system, that can be visualized for the user. And so you can push that back to the user and show them, here was success, here was failure, here's what happened. And so there's really great flexibility, I guess, at the user level, as well as sort of the back end infrastructure level, wherever that data is most valuable.
That's really good. So Kevin, if you don't have any questions, we have a great question. I think would be directed towards you, Kevin, from Adarsh. Can Matterport digital models be imported to CAD software?
Sorry about that. Yes. Yeah, we have a section actually located on our website. We can talk about how Matterport works with CAD and scan to BIM. Some great resources you can find on the website. Absolutely.
So thank you, Kevin. Harrison, I'll address this. Do these non-digital twin assets, such as that beverage dispenser, need to be modeled and placed into this scene? You're absolutely right. We have a capture mechanism. TeamworkAR has a capture mechanism that captures those particular machines, but you do have to add your animation sequences to that. So it depends on how complex the animation, but the key is even in the capturing and bringing it in is much faster than building it from scratch. So Tori, how do you create the interactions and integrate them into the Matterport capture? It's pretty interesting. So we will use TeamworkAR to actually do the capture of the unique asset. We then superimpose it onto the scene, and then from that point, we will do a lot of the interactions, whether it's into the Real Engine or into Unity, to be able to draw those sort of animations. Eric, this is from Chris. Oh, Eric, for Chris. Questions for Eric. This is for Eric. Is there data that supports generational preferences between game-like design versus photorealism? What a great question.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's good stuff. You guys probably have some good insight into that too. I've heard both sides. One thing I've heard is the complexity of the environment is an indicator of what works best. And this is variable by company, by user. So it's hard to say a straight answer. There's data supporting both sides of this. But one trend I'll highlight is if you're in an incredibly complex environment, reducing that complexity by making it quote unquote game-like can entrain a user in the training better. They're not as distracted with everything going on, and so they can sort of focus in. Here's my steps. Here's my two coworkers as an avatar. Here is this digital rendition of a machine, and it sort of automatically blocks out things that aren't important. The other side of this is also true. There's environments where everything's important from a safety perspective or from a workflow perspective. And so in those situations, the more photorealistic, true to life version of this environment is more valuable. So it's really tough, at least from what I've seen, to narrow in on which one's better. Like I said, there's data I've seen that both work, and it's variable on the environment and the use case. But I'd love to hear your guys' perspective.
So we are hearing with a lot of, if you can do complex and make it photorealism, they want it. If you can't get it really one, again, we go back to that Canny Valley, is that you need to make sure. But we're seeing in a lot of cases, a lot of gamers like the other effect. So it is your preference, but I think just as importantly, or even in some cases more important, is the time to develop. That to me is everything. And Ken, when we took a look at the customers that we're working with, and like we said, anywhere from 8 to 10% are the interactivities on the factory floor that you need to be. And people need to see the whole floor and need to navigate. They need that comfort zone because they might not ever see it until they actually get into the factory floor. So it's really important. And that's where we see incredible value. And as well, you're training people before they actually go there. What better way than to put them into the conference and not only show them, then watch them, and then send it back into a learning record store so you can see where they're at to make sure that when they get on the floor, they're not going to make any errors. Now, there's a question from Luis. You mentioned collaboration between Teamwork and Matterport. What's the platform in the back end? So if we're talking about teamwork collaboration, it's TeamworkAR, and our collaboration mechanism, we are partnered with Twilio to be able to do omni-channel delivery, and it's implemented using a series of APIs. As we work with Matterport, we're using the APIs to be able to exchange data back and forth. Eric, is there any chance we can get a link to run this example? It is possible. So let me get back to you on that.
There's a couple questions I can knock out at once, if you don't mind.
Sure.
So there was one on some of the data I presented earlier, if it's worldwide. Yes, it is worldwide, and sort of how that breaks down by region. It's another element where it's highly variable based on vertical and use case. But if we look really top level, something like Western Europe was an early adopter, especially in healthcare and manufacturing. North America came on a little later, Asia Pacific later than that. And whenever we mention Asia Pacific, it starts off maybe later, but scales incredibly quickly due to population and manufacturing capability and things like that. So those are some general trends. Asia Pacific was a little earlier in the manufacturing use case, like I mentioned, manufacturing adoption. Versus media and entertainment's a good example as well, more on the consumer side, but there's user bases that are more comfortable and more interested in sort of cutting edge, and that falls over to the enterprise as well. Their user bases perhaps more interested in a game-like experience at work, and so we saw some adoption earlier on there. And then there was another one that was somewhat related on the data side. Let me find it. Oh, sorry, we answered it already. I was going to discuss the game-like versus photorealism and what that looks like. So we handled that already.
Okay, and Chris says, can you share where you pull your 3D content from? Do you download the assets or you create them from scratch? We can do it both ways. You can download assets that are already created, and then if you haven't had your animations, you add your animations, or do you create them from scratch? Yes, you can create them from scratch two ways. That is building it off one model, or we also have the capability where we run our app that takes approximately, it guides you, takes automatic pictures as it guides you to go around in the 3D space. and it creates that 3D object, and then you add your animations after that. From Israel, how do you handle compliance issues and integration with other systems? So compliance, let me give you an example. So one of the more successful engagements is with the American Red Cross. They are FDA regulated. Since April 2021, the Red Cross has trained over 4,000 phlebotomists to be whole blood collectors using this technology. And every different interaction that a person takes has to be marked for compliance and has to be fed in to be audited from the FDA. Integration with other systems, I'll let, Kevin, they've got a great set of APIs. We have APIs as well that we work with, but Kevin, you might want to address that on your side.
Yeah. If there's APIs that can be leveraged, a Matterport can be integrated in several different levels and different complexities. So often we talk about how it's used operational workflow. I think APIs are really what is the key to unlock that ability. So there's also another question here, Doug, that I'll answer here around, can Matterport be run on premise? No, a Matterport is purely cloud hosted, no on-premise capability.
And the next question is, where is the data stored? In the cloud, the data interactions are stored on our cloud, and in this case, it's part of the subscription service, so there's not an extra price that's associated with it on our side.
Yep. Yeah. If Lewis is also speaking to the side of Matterport, also available in the cloud. Point cloud data is stored within Matterport and accessible through a subscription plan. Looks like this next one is, do you have examples of how a digital machine can interact?
So what we would do in this case, we would capture the factory floor. We would then add the digital machine within the factory floor. We would put the perspective of that machine as it's going and to direct it. So you're having not a fixed asset, you're having an asset. And we're actually doing it with one of our auto manufacturers where they're working with a cart where they need to show how to build things. And we did the scan using Matterport to be able to take a look at it. Then we had the actual equipment was scanned and used to be able to direct them.
There's a good question from Pam. What model is used to measure effectiveness of the training content? And so I think I mentioned a few. There's basically retention and recall. How well can a user remember and then recall that content? And how long does it last? Do they have to retrain in 15, 30, 60 days? If it's improved, then the answer is no. And so, we see that with immersive content and tying into that visual learning capability, that retention and recall is longer. There's also the error reduction. So if you go through your training paradigm, and let's say you have a pretty standardized error rate of whatever, 5 or 10%, and then that's down to almost zero after using mixed reality training, that's a really nice KPI, easy to understand, because people can visualize it and be as close to hands-on as possible before being hands-on. And that interaction is also very important. There's also just pure amount of time needed for training and reducing that. Instead of watching, going to a 2-day seminar for training and watching 8 hours and being lectured at for 8 hours, maybe you're on site for just 4 hours or 6 hours on site, whether actually on site using mixed reality or off site using mixed reality or virtual reality. You can basically compress that time for actual training and ramp up pretty quickly. One last element I'd mention that we're seeing more of is real-time in situ training in mixed reality. So having overlay while you're on site working, you can accomplish your task with accuracy and with safety, theoretically with no training, because you're training in real time. And so on-ramp can be instant in some circumstances. And so that's another way of not only reducing training time, but reducing on-ramp time and time to efficiency.
Yeah, I can talk, that's the last question, but that I can talk specifically. American Red Cross, they delivered the training times dropped from $3,700 to $1,500 due to the fact that there was a reduction in training time. There was absolutely no travel to be able to do it. And then they measured the collection results, how many were collected and what was the success, as well as the NPS and how they were judged. So you're looking at quantitative at the end, how they were doing, but even from a cost saving, cutting a course by 50%, reducing 100% of the travel, all of a sudden the dividends are amazing. And again, it goes back to the visualization, being there, working in a group environment to be able to interact. I mean, it's not a solitary, they got to work together. So again, we're seeing this is a pivotal year for mixed reality, and it's going to be generational change. And we're just really happy to be part of it, and we really hope you enjoyed and found this quite informative. And I would really suggest taking a look at the handouts, because there are questions about how long it takes and what's the time it takes, and there's some really good estimates that are included in there as well. But before I wrap this up, I'd like to say, Eric, fantastic. Thank you very much for your insight. And Kevin, I think we're going to start a real good partnership. And to all the people out there, thank you very much for your time. And at that point, we'll close. Emily?
Yes, thank you so much. The handouts can be found next to the Q&A on the right side of your screen. Have a great day.
Thank you.